Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Essay. And today we're reading again Arnold Bennett from Books and Persons. And these were originally printed in the New Age between 1908 and 1911 under the pseudonym of Jacob Tonson. Today, I'm gonna read the last for Bennett for today, or at least we're gonna put him to rest for a little while, and then we'll come back to him in a later date because I have more that are well worth reading. Uh, but today I'm going to do two. One a little longer than normal, and one a very short one. And the first one is Artists and Money, which was published 6th of October 1910. And it goes with more or less the one I read yesterday. So I'm going to do that one and then go back a week or so, a couple weeks, to one from 22nd of September 1910 as well, the length of novels. But we'll start it with Artists and Money. A month ago, apropos of the difficulties of running a high class literary periodical, I wrote the following words: idle to argue that genuine artists ought to be indifferent to money. They are not. And what is still more curious, they will seldom produce their best work unless they really do want money. The pronouncement came at an unfortunate moment, which was the very moment that Mr. Sampson appeared to be denying that a certain fine heat and thesis of Lord Rosebery, that poverty is good for poets. Somebody even quoted me against Mr. Sampson in favor of Lord Rosebery. This I much regret, and it has been on my mind ever since. I do not wish to be impolite on the subject of Lord Rosebery. He is an aging man, probably exasperated by the consciousness of failure. All at one time, many years ago, he had his hours of righteous enthusiasm, and he has always upheld the banner of letters in a social sphere whose notorious proud stupidity has been immemorially blind to the true function of art in life. But if any remark of Lord Rosebery's at a public banquet could fairly be adduced to real support of an argument of mine, I should be disturbed. And in fact, I hardly agreed with Mr. Simpson's admonishment of Lord Rosebery's speech about genius and poverty. Lord Rosebery was talking nonsense, and as with all his faults, he cannot be charged with the stupidity of his class. He must have known that he was talking nonsense. The truth is that as an official mouthpiece of the nation, he was merely trying to excuse, in an official perfunctory way, the inexcusable behavior of the nation towards its artists. As regards my own assertion that genuine artists will seldom produce their best works unless they really do want money, I fail to see how it compares with Lord Rosebery's assertion. Moreover, I must explain that I was not thinking of poets. I was thinking of prose writers who do have a chance of making a bit of money. Money has scarcely any influence on the activity of poets, because they are aware that no matter how well they succeed, the chances are 1,000,000 to 1 against any appreciable monetary reward. An extreme lack of money will, of course, hamper them, and must, of course, do harm to the artist in them. An assured plenty of money may conceivably induce lethargy, but the hope of making money by their art will not spur them on, for there is no hope. No, I ought to have said explicitly at that time that I had in mind not poets who by the indifference of the public are set apart from money, but of those artists who have a reasonable opportunity of becoming public darlings and of earning now and then incomes which a grocer would not despise. That these later are constantly influenced by money and spurred on by their finest efforts by the need of the money necessary for the satisfaction of their tastes. It is a fact amply proved by the experience of everybody who is on intimate terms with the term in real life. It almost amounts to common literary knowledge. It applies equally to the mediocre and to the distinguished artist. Those persons who have not participated in the pleasure and the pains of intimacy with distinguished writers depending for a livelihood on their pens can learn the truth about them by reading the correspondence of such authors as Scott, Balzac, Dickens, de Maupassant, and Stevenson. It is an absolute certainty that we owe about half the Comedy Humaine to Balzac's extravagant imprudence. It is equally sure that Scott's mania for landed estate was responsible for a very considerable part of the artistic output, and so on. When once an artist has tasted the money of art, the desire thus set up will make his genius hard at work better than any other incentive. It occasionally happens that an artist financially prudent after doing a few fine things either makes or comes into much money that he is wealthy for the rest of his life. Such a condition induces idleness, induces a disinclination to fight against artistic difficulties. Naturally, I would give living examples in England today, but my directions sends me to France for an instance. Take Francois de Curel. Francois de Curel was writing 20 years ago dramatic works of the very best kind. Their value was acknowledged by the few, and it remains permanent. The author is definitely classed as a genius in the history of French theater, but the verdict was not yet been endorsed by the public. For quite a number of years, Monsieur de Curel has produced particularly nothing on the stage. He has preferred to withdraw from the battle against the indifference of the public. Had he needed money, the hope of money would have forced him to continue the battle. And now we should have had perhaps a half a dozen really fine plays by Francois de Curel that we do not at present exist. But he did not need money. He was in the receipt of a large income from iron foundries. So now we go back to 22nd of September 1910 for Arnold Bennett's short piece on the length of novels. It happened lately to a lady who is one of the pillars of the British Weekly to state in her column of innocuous gossip about clothes, weather, and holidays that 100,000 words or 350 pages was the comfortable limit for a novel. I feel sure she meant no harm by it, and that she attached but little importance to it. The thing was expressed with a condescension which was perhaps scarcely becoming to a paragraphist, but such accidents will happen even in the most workmanlike columns of gossip and are to be forgiven. Nevertheless, the Westminster Gazette has seized hold of the paragraph, framed it in 22-karat gold, and hung it up for observation. And a magnificent summer correspondence has blossomed around it, to the great profit of the Westminster Gazette, which receives gratis daily about a column and a half of matter signed by expensive names. Other papers, daily and weekly, have also joined in the din and the fray. As the discussion is perfectly futile, I do not propose to add to it. In spite of the more or less violent expression of preferences, nobody really cares whether a novel is long or short. In spite of the fact that a certain type of mind, common among publishers, is always apt to complain that a novel in a given moment are either too long or too short, the length of a novel has no influence whatever on its success or failure. One of the most successful novels of the present generation, Ships That Pass in the Night, is barely 60,000 words long. One of the most successful novels of the present generation, The Heavenly Twins, is quite 200,000 words long, but were of the right length for the public. As for the mid-Victorian novels, most of the correspondents appear to have a very vague idea of their length. It is said they exceeded 200,000 words. It would be within the mark to say they exceeded 400,000 words. There is no one of them, however, that would not be tremendously improved by being cut down to about half, and even then, the best of them could not compare with The Mayor of Casterbridge, Nostromo, or Way of All Flesh. The damning fault of all mid-Victorian novels is that they are incurably ugly and sentimental. Novelists had not yet discovered the first business of a work of art is to be beautiful, and its second, not to be sentimental. So there ends our week, or a little more possibly, of Arnold Bennett. And I thought I'd end on one that was a bit contentious, because he says, that he thinks that the mid-Victorian novels should be cut in half, and that they were ugly um, and sentimental, and that the first business of a work of art is to be beautiful, and its second, not to be sentimental. But what is a long novel for you? I've been watching BookTube, and people seem to think that a 300-page novel, or when it goes to 350, oh, it's a huge novel. To me, that should be average size for a novel. Anything less than 350, 400 pages to me is short. But then I'm used to reading ones that are 5, 6, 700 or longer pages. So anything, under 400, 350 is getting on the shorter side for me. But anyway, I found that interesting. I hope that hasn't bored everybody with Arnold Bennett. I know some have piped up to say they've enjoyed it. So those who haven't will rejoice in that I'm taking a break from Arnold Bennett, and we're going to move on to some other essays. And I will see you tomorrow, BookTube. Bye.